Okay, wonderful. My name is Tom Stowell, and I'm one of the career advisors in the Career Center. And I have worked with graduate students for about 20 years in a variety of different capacities. So I'm really pleased to be with you this evening to be talking about networking. What I'd like to do is to just sort of share a slide deck with you that will be available after the presentation as well. We'll make sure that you get a copy of the presentation and the related links. I'd also like to kind of go back and forth between the presentation and some of the tools that you can use online. So I'd like to showcase a few of those for you. And then I want to leave time at the end before our hour is up to open it up to any questions that all of you may have. Networking is one of those career management techniques that is often one of the most painful for a lot of people, myself included. I've been doing this for many years, as I mentioned, and networking is my least favorite activity. But I will tell you, almost every job I've gotten has been through networking. So let me go ahead and share with you the slide deck. We'll go through some basic information about utilizing your network and how to effectively actually create a networking plan for yourself so that you can increase your chances of finding employment. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is just to define what professional networking is. Networking in and of itself has gotten a negative, somewhat response from people. That word really is sort of misunderstood. So I think if we break it down, really what this means is it's all about communication. It's all about building relationships. And this is something that we do on a daily basis, whether or not we call it networking or whether we call it just, again, building relationships and sharing information. This is something that, again, we do on a regular basis. And it really is at the core of what we do in terms of connecting with people. So the reason that this is sort of an important component is, as we look at the job market today and we look at the competitive nature, one of the things that we learn is that individuals who are plugged into professional networks have an easier time of securing employment than those who do not let the people that they know in on the fact that they're searching for a job, the type of job that they're searching for. And those people, are not working on their behalf. So individuals who leverage their networks tend to find jobs more quickly than those who do not. So there is a fair amount of resistance to networking, and you may or may not be in this camp. I share this because I often hear this for people that I work with, that, I often don't network because I find it intimidating, or, I don't want to bother people. Some of the beliefs that we often hear from people is that it feels fake and it can feel a bit manipulative. It doesn't feel genuine when you're reaching out to people perhaps that you don't know. Networking feels like you're selling yourself. It may feel like only those people who are extroverted or who have an easier time connecting with people are successful networkers. Some people believe that the best networking happens in large groups, and I can tell you that that's not the case at all. Many people believe that networking is uncomfortable, and in fact, for a lot of people, it is. It does not feel natural to share your experiences, to share your goals with other people that you may not know. Some people believe that they should be able to get a position based on their experience and education, that should just be enough to get the job. And in a traditional sense, it should be. But again, based on the current economic situation and the competitiveness of all of the jobs out there, having additional connections to help you find and land positions is extremely important. Other people believe that networking is best done spontaneously, and some have said that they're bothering somebody if they ask for a meeting. These are all very real beliefs that people have around networking. I would encourage us to think about networking from a slightly different perspective. Resisting this process is normal. We are not built to automatically seek out assistance from others. Many of us, because of the way that we've been trained through our academic programs, try to utilize the logic that we have, the knowledge that we have to be able to solve the problems that are placed in front of us. And so reaching out to other people and relying on others to try to help us move forward in our careers feels a bit foreign. It can be an awkward exercise. So just recognize that that's normal. Networking really is a lifelong career management technique. It's not something that you can just start just before a job search and then end as soon as you have the position that you move into. This is something that started a long, long time ago for you. Again, most networks start with our families and close friends, and then as we gain additional work experience, expands to people who have professional connections. This is something that we will be doing the entire time that we're in the job market, the entire time that we are working. So this is something, unlike writing a resume, which is a point-in-time event, networking is something that you need to pay close attention to throughout your entire career. Networking really is about using social, personal, and professional contacts to help you learn more about a field of interest or an organization. One of the biggest mistakes that people assume is that networking is just to get a job. And that's why people feel very inauthentic about the process of networking, is that they only enter into this networking conversation or seek out people to connect with when they're looking to make a move. If you treat networking as a lifelong career management technique, it feels less like you're using it as a job search tool and more just as utilizing a professional connection. In fact, introverts and extroverts can successfully network. I happen to be in that introvert category. Not as easy for me to go out into a large group of people and to meet individuals. I've learned how to do it over the years, but it's uncomfortable for some. It can be planned, or it can happen when you least expect it. We've all heard the story of when you step into an elevator and all of a sudden you're there with a very senior individual, whether you're in an internship or a job situation. What you say in that moment and how you treat that potential connection could mean the difference between a further conversation or a blown opportunity. So you have to be prepared at almost any time. I would also encourage you to keep in mind that people typically enjoy talking about themselves and their work if they like their work. Most people enjoy helping others. You are not bothering people by asking them for an informational interview, for example, which is one of the prime tools that we utilize. So why do we network? Network helps us to tap into the hidden job market. A recent study that was actually just published in Fortune magazine indicated that only about 20% of the jobs that are available today are posted somewhere for you to view. So just 20% of all of the jobs that are available are posted on a job board, on some sort of network that is looking to fill a particular position. So that means 80% of the actual potential jobs that are out there are not seen by the general public. And the way to tap into those is to ask individuals that you know at companies that you target what they might be looking for in terms of positions to fill. That's one of the reasons why I encourage people to begin to reach out to people who are working in the companies that you may have targeted where you'd like to work for, or who are parts of professional associations. Because there are so many jobs that are available, so many projects that are being developed by certain companies where these positions just aren't posted yet, or they're not going to be posted at all. They're going to use word of mouth to try to fill these positions. It also helps you to gain visibility for future job openings. If you go and meet with someone to talk to them about their job, to find out a little bit more information about the company that they work for, they may then think of you and the types of credentials that you bring with you if a future opening were to come available. And so again, the goal of networking isn't an immediate job offer, but it is to gain that visibility so that people keep you in mind if positions open in the future. And probably one of the most important things to remember is that referrals through a company network are one of the #1 ways that individuals have found jobs in today's market. So if you have a colleague, or if there's a fellow Hopkins alum that maybe you don't know, but they happen to work for a company that you're targeting, that you're really excited to potentially work for, utilizing an employee referral program can dramatically reduce the amount of time that it takes for you to find a position. And in fact, many employers are utilizing these internal employee referral networks to hire good talent because they're receiving so many applications for every one open position. Depending on the field, there could be anywhere between 75 to 100 applications for one open position, all the way up to 300 or 400. It really just depends, again, on the industry, on the specialty skill. We know that in some areas, certain engineering areas, certain areas that many of you may be coming from, there may be a shortage of talent. So you may be in a positive position to be able to seek out opportunities, again, depending on the industry. But utilizing a network or utilizing some of these tools, on average, can cut your job search time in half. One of the studies that was recently done about those who received a job offer after sort of massaging their network, and those who did not use personal or professional connections, it really was quite dramatic. Those who had utilized professional connections, had reached out, had maybe gained a referral through a company referral network, their job search was about 50% less in terms of the time that it took to receive a job offer. So that could mean, on an average job search that may take 6 to 9 months, you're talking about cutting that in half to anywhere between 4.5 months total. And again, that's on average. Some move more quickly, some move more slowly. So knowing what we've just talked about, what percentage of hiring managers indicate that they filled positions through their network or the networks of their colleagues in early 2017? So take just a minute to type in the chat box what you think the answer would be here: A, B, C, or D. Okay, so good guesses. Many of you would be surprised to learn that it's actually E. 87% of hiring managers indicate that they filled positions through their networks or the networks of their colleagues in early 2017. 87%. I was blown away by that number. I wasn't necessarily surprised, but it just keeps creeping higher and higher and higher. This is a very interesting, statistic, because it just shows that in order to really break through any particular company or organization, doing your due diligence and trying to find people who are either through the Hopkins network or other professional connections that you may have is really critically important. It at least is going to help you have your resume pulled from the bottom of the stack to the top and reviewed. If someone is speaking on your behalf, then typically, again, good people know good people, as I pointed out on the last slide. So when we think about networking, usually we approach people for a variety of different reasons. And if you can remember the acronym AIRS, this may help you to frame future conversations with people. So typically, when we are in a position to want to advance professionally, whether that be looking for a job, whether it be creating a broader professional network for people to team up with, whether it be looking for people to do research with, we often approach people for advice. And that could be advice on anything related to how you're presenting yourself. You may be asking people for advice about how you've written your resume. You may be asking people for advice about the company that they work for. You may be asking their advice as someone who's in the job market. What advice would they have for you? Or you may be seeking information. Maybe you want to know more about how someone has utilized their degree since graduating from Hopkins. Maybe you want to know a little bit more about the industry, about the number of hours per week that you can expect to be working in any given job. What a typical compensation package might look like. Any of those types of questions typically fall into the advice or information category. And that's one of the primary things that we'll be doing when we're in a job search mode, is seeking out people for that advice or information. The other two components of the AIRS model of networking are referrals and support. So if you're meeting with people and having conversations with people, they may or may not be able to help you. For example, if you approach your family or close friends, perhaps they don't work in the industry or the field that you do, but they may be able to refer you to someone who does. So asking an individual close to you, again, those that are in our inner circle or our inner network, for referrals to people that they may know, you would be surprised about how quickly you can begin to amass a list of people that you could approach that have one or two deviations of a connection from a person that you know. And again, these are people that you may be referred to speak, about advice or information, or they may be able to put a good word in for you at their company through an employee referral system. The other reason we network is for support. So we may be going to professors, we may be going to peers, we may be going to family members, mentors, or others to say, I'm entering into this job search. I could really use your support. And that support could mean a multitude of things. It could just be asking people to keep their eye out for you. If there are opportunities that come up, or if there's information that they think that you need, just showing you that information. Thinking about people who could potentially be on that networking list for you. So consider the AIRS model, and every time you approach someone, try to think about which one of these four components of the model you are actually looking for. It will clarify for you why you're approaching that person, and will also clarify for the individual what it is that you're seeking. Because one of the biggest concerns that people who are reached out to for a conversation often share with us is that they want to be helpful, but the person who's making the request to have a conversation or a meeting isn't really clear on what they're looking for. So try to be really clear for yourself what you're looking for from that individual, and in turn share that information with that person so they can be clear on how to help you. So there are a variety of different networking tools that I want to touch upon this evening. The first is informational interviews, which very few people use, but are one of the best ways to make a new professional connection. Company referral programs we've just talked about, but we will go into a little bit further a bit later. Talking about traditional networking events. Sometimes when people think about networking, they think about these large rooms filled with people, and that being the best way to make a connection. That certainly is one way, but certainly not the only way. There are also some wonderful non-traditional networking opportunities or events that you can utilize. In today's digital job search, utilizing social media as a way to enhance your search and enhance the group of people who know you, and in fact, enhancing your professional network online using Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and other resources. Actually, we're seeing an increase of individuals who make these connections online before they ever speak in person. So Twitter, you wouldn't normally think about as a job search tool or a networking tool, but it's becoming an incredibly interesting player in the job search. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. So before you actually begin actively trying to expand your group of individuals that you are connected with, assess your personal brand. And what I mean by this is make sure that you take a look at your resume, that you've updated that resume, that it's ready to go, that you look at your social media and you make sure that it is also up to date, that the way that you present yourself in person, that you are ready to kind of go out and meet with people, which means that, you pull the suit out of the closet, if you're going to meet somebody on a job site, you're probably not going to wear a suit, but you're not going to dress in blue jeans either. So identifying that interview attire that you might need to kind of pull out, or, kind of figure out your professional outfit as you get ready to begin to do this. Brand congruence really just means making sure that your resume, your social media, everything that you are pulling together that tells the story of you as a professional is consistent. Oftentimes people overlook their Facebook pages or their Instagram pages. Make sure that you update the privacy settings on those. Make sure that, again, what you want people to see is viewed. It is absolutely understood that any employer is probably going to Google you, or at the very least, they're going to conduct a LinkedIn search to take a look at your LinkedIn page, even before they agree to meet with you, or if you're an applicant for a position. So if you haven't Googled yourself recently, you may try to do that and see what comes up. You may need to update some of your privacy settings on other social media. One of the other things that I would encourage you to do is to call your own phone number and listen to the outgoing message that anybody calling your voicemail might hear. If you need to update that, certainly do so. It's much better to leave a personal voicemail message for people than it is for them to hear the automatic generated voicemail message if you're not available. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is to add a signature line to your email. If you haven't done that already, go ahead and include your name, include the fact that you are in a graduate program at Hopkins, include that graduate program. If you want to put a link to your LinkedIn profile there, that would be appropriate. Perhaps you want to add a telephone number, maybe your cell number or whatever number they're going to be able to reach you at easiest. And go ahead and share your email address as well. Adding a signature line is just another way to sort of professionalize your communications. Make sure that you also have an elevator pitch prepared. So, be able to describe in 30 seconds or less who you are, what you stand for, and what you're looking for. This can be a bit of a difficult thing to do in a short period of time, but if you are ever caught in a situation where you're introduced to someone who is in a position of power, that could make or break potential opportunities in the future. So you want to be sure that you have practiced a bit of an elevator pitch, that you can introduce yourself to someone, and at the very least, it helps to prepare you for the interview when you're likely going to be asked to answer the "tell me about yourself" question. So all of this sort of plays into your preparation ahead of time. And then finally, as I mentioned before, determine your goals for networking. Are you really seeking to expand your connections? Is that the primary goal? Or are you really looking to learn about jobs that aren't posted? So try to be really clear before you even start this process. Make sure that all of these things are in place. So where do you start? One of the things that I encourage people to do is to make a list, a physical list. Just get out a piece of paper and start listing people that you think you could go to for advice, for information, for referral, or for support, that AIRS model again. So start with your inner circle. Think about your peers, other people who are in your classes. If you're working, they may have good connections at different companies. Many of you bring really good work experiences to your programs. So, take some time to get to know your peers, understand where they're coming from, what their backgrounds are. You may be able to help one another. And reciprocal networking is one of the best types of networking where you can help one another. Faculty, any advisors, mentors, other close connections, family, spouses or partners, friends, very close colleagues. People who you have the utmost trust and comfort in are a good place to start. And again, this may not necessarily be a time where these individuals can provide you with direct resources, but perhaps they know of people who could be of assistance to you. So many times we find that our inner circle wants to help us the most, but they may feel somewhat limited because maybe they're not working in our areas of expertise. But chances are, if you just let them know that you're getting ready to launch into a job search and that you are looking for X type of position, be specific about what you're looking for, these individuals will come through for you almost every time. They will begin to think about colleagues or other people, neighbors, friends, family acquaintances that they might be able to connect you with that may be a great start to networking. Once you've done that, speak with professional connections that you have a relationship with. These may not be people that you completely trust or that as you would your inner circle, but people who are coworkers who may be doing an interesting job, former coworkers, colleagues or coworkers of a spouse or partner, All of these people, again, have a connection and they're more likely to perhaps respond to a request. But it's, again, another place to start. And finally, what I think tends to be the scariest part of networking for many people is reaching out to people you don't know. So looking at experts in the field, people who are in aspirant positions. Let's just say that, a few years from now, you want to be in a very senior leadership role. Seek those people out. Ask them, how did you get to where you are? What advice would you give for somebody coming into the field with my experience and my education? Starting at the top can actually be a very good technique for connecting with people in those aspirant positions. There are professional associations for almost every single industry and profession. If you've not considered joining a professional association yet, I would encourage you to do so, because typically as a student, you can get a very discounted rate. There are built-in connections. There are oftentimes segments of these professional associations that meet in individual cities. So there are likely to be connections in Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, wherever you happen to want to be. Consider those professional associations or societies as a way to make some good connections. You may also consider attending conferences, seminars, career fairs, or other events where you can physically meet people who have similar interests, backgrounds, or education that you may have. Referrals from colleagues, friends, professors, etc. Again, reaching out to people cold is not a bad thing. You can say that you were referred by a certain person. That actually helps a great deal. And then one of the things that many people do now is to utilize social media to your advantage. So utilize Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, different blogs to be able to reach out and let people know who you are, what professional information you have to offer. That will be one way to sort of expand who knows who you are, who knows what you can offer through some of those online conversations. I mentioned a moment ago that one of the best tools for a job seeker is an informational interview. And so an informational interview, if you're not familiar with them, is really an interview that you initiate to begin building a professional relationship. Your focus here is on gathering information, seeking advice, securing support, or asking for a referral to another individual. It really does help you to explore different career options, to clarify your goals, to understand those career opportunities that just aren't posted within companies. Again, in many of the fields that all of you are in, many of them are project-based. And so, an organization may have just gotten a new contract and they're looking to ramp up hiring. They may be looking to hire several people with your skill set. And so it's good for you to be able to make that connection with a senior person who may have the ability to hire. And they're more likely to do so once you've made that one-on-one connection. Can also help you build confidence for more formal job interviews. These are great opportunities for you to just sort of practice meeting people in person, meeting people virtually, and then helping to really identify some of your professional strengths and weaknesses. I often find that individuals who I've had informational interviews with in the past have been more senior to me, and they've been very honest and have indicated that based on my career goals, there were certain skills gaps that I needed to fill, or there were certain professional weaknesses that I needed to work on in order to achieve that goal. That can be invaluable information that someone is willing to share with you, again, during an informational interview. So what should you do? If you are requesting an informational interview from somebody that you don't know, there are plenty of different ways to do that. What I've done here is just given you a quick sample of a potential email that you might send to an individual that you find online. And if you're not familiar with Go Hop Online, it is our university alumni database. And so if you've not taken time to look at that, I would encourage you to do so. Go ahead and create a username and password for that. And that's a great way to be able to identify individuals who are willing to speak with you about different career options. Certainly not the only way, but one of the good tools to use. So what you want to do here is basically describe who you are, the fact that you are pursuing a graduate degree, and that particular degree will lead hopefully to a position in whatever your field is. I use electrical and computer engineering here as an example. And then let them know what you're looking for. Basically, you're contacting them because they have experience in the field. You'd like the chance to ask them a few questions about your career path and any tips, about their career path and any tips that they might have for you entering the job search. You're asking them for 15 to 20 minutes of their time, typically by phone or video. You can also ask them in person if they happen to be in the same area that you are and you'd like to meet them in person, but give them a choice. The other thing that you want to do is to really rearrange your schedule around when they are free. I've had many people say to me, Tom, when you talk to students, please tell them that, look, I'm more than happy to meet with them, but if they only give me a few limited days and times that they're available and those don't work for me, I get turned off by the process. So it may be a little bit more work on your part, but if you can arrange your schedule around the availability of the individual that you're writing to, that would be definitely a positive. Now, 15 to 20 minutes may go by and the individual may be perfectly happy to keep chatting, but you don't want to take up a ton of their time and you want to be very clear that you respect their time. So at the 15-minute mark of these conversations, you might just say, I promise to only take a short amount of time. I realize you may have other things to do. So, I just wanted to check in with you. If you've got a few more minutes, I have a few more questions. If not, perhaps we could speak another time. Oftentimes people will appreciate the fact that you are thinking about their time and that, you have checked in with them. I have seen and actually witnessed myself informational interviews that were scheduled for 15 minutes go on for an hour and a half. So it really just depends on, again, how you make that individual connection. And again, it could be a very short conversation or it could turn into something more. So follow-up in all of these situations is key. You go in, you have the meeting, you ask questions that are on your mind, you ask for that advice, you ask for that information. Maybe the individual is willing to refer you through the internal referral system, whatever that may be. Follow-up is often the most overlooked part of this networking process. You want to make sure that you are nurturing your connections, and so following up within about 24 hours of any professional meeting is standard practice. Even if it's just to say, I really appreciated your time, I learned a great deal from our conversation, I hope you'll allow me to be in touch with you in the future to check in on, how you're doing, or, to learn a little bit more about the positions that you mentioned might be opening up in 2 to 3 months. A very short follow-up is key, basically to thank them for their time and to try to keep that momentum going. The other way that you can keep contacts fresh and connected is to try to add value to an individual that you meet with. So this goes back to what we call reciprocal or value-added networking. So for you to look for opportunities to help an individual. There's been some research out of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania that says that individuals are more likely to help you if you've helped them first. So perhaps you had a nice conversation with someone and you came across an article that speaks directly to a topic that you addressed during your conversation. If that's the case, you may just want to go ahead and forward that on and say, thought you might be interested in seeing this article. It was really timely given what we discussed a few weeks ago. Hope you're doing well. Those types of things are ways to extend and nurture your connections and network, because you don't want to put all this time and energy into building a professional group of people that you have relationships with and then not manage it. You may be able to help these folks with career opportunities in the future. They are a good way for you to sort of remain connected to certain companies. I have people that I connected with at the very beginning of my career that I still reach out to once or twice a year. One of the, kind of interesting tools that are out there on LinkedIn is it will let you know when people's birthdays are. So as simple as it may sound, just looking at what LinkedIn tells you is coming up in terms of people's birthdays, reaching out to somebody and letting them know that you hope that they have a great day. That's one way to kind of keep your connections on the back burner. There is a tool called Jibber Jobber. It's kind of a weird name, but it is an interesting tool that I'm going to show you in just a moment that can help you manage your contacts. So LinkedIn is a great tool. Jibber Jobber is also another really great resource. It's a wonderful job search tool to help you keep track of personal connections. Handwritten thank you notes. Almost nobody does handwritten thank you notes anymore. So if you do, you will stand out. And one of the things you can do is take the note with you when you meet with somebody. Sit in the lobby after you've met with that individual and write the thank you note, maybe hand it to the receptionist and have them give it to that person later. Email is also pretty widely accepted at this point, again, so long as you email within that 24-hour time frame. So how do we manage this process? If we are going to large events, again, one of the things that you can do in order to kind of meet the most people is to go to these professional conferences, these symposia, these research conferences, and to kind of make these connections. So what are some of the things that you can do? One of the things that you can do, first and foremost, is to volunteer. So if you're attending a particular conference or event, being a part of the actual committee that puts on the event is always a great thing to do to be able to meet people if it's not the most comfortable thing for you to do. So, define again what types of events are comfortable. If you're attending a large event, try to go with a colleague or a buddy. You may have to psych yourself to be on. Take time when you arrive to get the lay of the land. Observe. When you walk into these, large conferences, what I often do is look to the four corners of the room. Usually you'll find the most introverted people in the group standing in one of the four corners of the room. And they actually are a wonderful group of people to go over and talk to. They are there. They're probably, not really interested in kind of jumping right into a conversation with a large group of people, but they can be a great place to start. Understand your natural cycle of being at your best. Whenever you're preparing for a conversation, whether it's one-on-one or in a large group, try to figure out what your natural cycle is. If you are better in the morning, try to schedule morning events, morning coffee meetings. If you're better in the afternoon or evening, then try to schedule, drinks after work or, another type of meeting, again, based on when you are best, when you're at your natural best. Set realistic goals going into these events as well. If you go into a job fair or you go into to any type of conference or networking event, think quality and not quantity of the contacts that you make. If you walk out of there, in my opinion, with one or two new connections, then that's a success. Now, there are some people who are master networkers who can make their way around the room and connect with 50 people in 45 minutes. If that's you, that's great. If that's not you, think about what those realistic goals are. Try to bring business cards. If you don't have business cards, you can get them printed really inexpensively through places like Vistaprint or Staples, and then practice your pitch. How are you going to introduce yourself to others? As I mentioned at the very beginning, consider volunteering at the event as a ways to ease into these connections. Seek out fellow introverts if you happen to be one to break the ice. And know your limits and recognize when you've had enough. You don't have to get there right at the time it starts and leave right when it ends. You might show up 15 minutes into the event and leave after 30. That really depends on sort of what you see as the value of this particular networking event. And these, again, are traditional events. So how do you reduce stress? For people who really don't like to go to these large networking events, and again, there are tons of them that happen all over the DC-Baltimore region regularly. Consider creating your own events. Maybe you want to invite a few people with shared interest to lunch. That can be a great opportunity to meet people in a very casual setting. Now that we're going into the holiday season, you may be invited to a number of different holiday gatherings. These, believe it or not, are some of the best networking opportunities because people tend to be relatively happy toward the end of the year. People tend to really be fairly reflective at this time of year. So if you are at a family or, some sort of neighborhood gathering, these can be really interesting events to be able to attend, and some good opportunities to make some potential connections. Utilize social media to your advantage. In just a moment, I'm going to share with you some of the tools that are available. But if you want to become known and you want people to perhaps seek you out as an expert in the field as opposed to seeking them out, one of the ways to do that is to build your social media profile and to create a level of knowledge capital through sharing your ideas, through sharing your research, through sharing information that let others see you as someone to go to for that advice or information. We all, have wonderful abilities to listen, and oftentimes we don't use our listening abilities to our advantage. So when you are in a networking situation, you want to go in and basically plant a question, and then step back and let the person that you're networking with or connecting with speak. Try not to interrupt or, keep that conversation moving. Just sort of step back a minute, listen to really what they're saying, and I can guarantee you that, those individuals will share some really interesting information with you if you just let them speak. That's one of the biggest mistakes that we make because we're nervous sometimes in these situations where we may not know a person really well. We feel like we have to keep the conversation moving, and that dead air may be a negative thing. But in a conversation that's free-flowing, a little dead air is not a bad thing. You can also use some conversation starters to break the ice. I've got a few on the next slide. You may want to schedule some time before or afterwards to relax and recharge, and then certainly follow up within 24 hours. So if you are, at an event of any kind, whether it's a traditional type of networking event or whether it's a more casual gathering of friends or coworkers or colleagues, there are always typically a couple of things that you can say that will get a conversation moving. So what brings you to X event today? Where are you from? What do you do? I spend a lot of time talking with people in Washington, and even before they ask your name, sometimes they want to know what you do and who you work for. So be prepared to ask some of those types of questions. You may acknowledge the awkwardness. If it's somebody that you've never met before, a way to break the ice would be to say, I'm really not at home in these networking situations, but, I'm really excited to be here, and, just kind of shares that awkwardness a little bit with the individual. Also, sharing a compliment is a good way to open someone up. So as trivial as it may be, if somebody's wearing a nice tie or they have a nice scarf on or, a piece of jewelry that you admired, something of that nature, share a compliment with them. You'll be surprised at how far that goes. And simply saying hello and taking it from there. How many times have we been in an elevator with people we don't know and everybody sort of scatters to the corner, looks down, looks up, doesn't make eye contact, nobody says hello to one another? We are all guilty of this at one point or another. So simply saying hello and taking it from there isn't a bad strategy. Now, sometimes when you are at one of these events, you may end up getting somebody who's a clinger, and they want to spend a good chunk of time with you. So it is always good to have an exit strategy. So you can either, sort of bow out using one of the lines here that we've thought of for you, or think about another way to bow out of a conversation. That can be one of the most awkward parts of a conversation, is ending a conversation that you feel has gone on perhaps a little bit too long. So LinkedIn is a go-to. Moving on now from kind of those event-based networking to the social media networking components. LinkedIn is a go-to tool for professional networking and is a great place to showcase your digital brand and to connect with employers, professionals, and groups. So if you haven't spent any time on LinkedIn, I would encourage you to do so because, again, if people are Googling you, one of the first things potentially that can come up is a LinkedIn profile, and it speaks volumes about you. You want to, if you haven't had one taken, have a professional headshot done. The selfie that you took in the car last week doesn't really cut it. Try to have a professional headshot taken if you can. Many organizations will do this. I know that we've had folks available at different career fairs to do professional headshots. You have an opportunity to join groups and to follow certain companies or organizations. This helps you to gather business intelligence. Oftentimes, companies will post positions that are available, and sometimes they'll only post them on LinkedIn. Other times when there's a big news story involving that company, if it's a mid-size or a large company, they'll post that news on LinkedIn. So it's a great way to gather business intelligence. Make sure that you complete your profile, your summary, the education, undergrad and graduate education, as well as any training, certifications that you may have, all of your experience. And then utilize the job search and the alumni search features, which I'm going to go into in just a moment. The other thing that you can do is make your profile visible to recruiters. So if you are in the job search and you want recruiters to potentially find you, there is a privacy setting that you can change that allows your profile to be visible to recruiters. Reach out to established contacts, continue to make contacts, and you can actually keep notes in LinkedIn about the connections that you make. Twitter is also another tool that some people use exclusively. Twitter is in the news a great deal lately because it has entered our political discourse in many ways. And we're seeing companies using Twitter, individuals using Twitter more than they ever have. So Twitter is a tool that not a lot of people think about for a job search, but it can be, again, another way to extend your knowledge, extend your brand, to be seen by others as somebody who has knowledge that can be shared and maybe tapped into. So again, try to create a Twitter handle using your name or a combination of your name and your profession. You can upload a headshot, again here, so that people can see who they're communicating with. Create a very short profile, and in that, try to highlight your skills, experience, what you're looking for. And then, tweet or retweet about things that are happening in real time. If there are new advances happening in your field, if there are new regulations, if there was a news article that you think is particularly pertinent and you have some thoughts about it, go ahead and tweet or retweet those as well. You can follow certain organizations and lists on Twitter. You can also look for tweet chats or tweet ups, which are different Twitter events that are put on. That could bring together people who have a certain industry expertise to discuss a certain area. Retweet, reply, and direct message to establish personal connections and to keep a conversation going beyond just your traditional tweet. And you can search and follow specific hashtags that are relevant to your industry or to your work. A lot of human resource offices now are posting jobs on Twitter as well. So you can search for jobs by location, job title, hashtags, and other social recruiting sources. For example, if you look at Tweet My Jobs, that is one hashtag that you can use, one area that you could look at in terms of Twitter. Again, this is something that just a couple of years ago would not have been utilized, but I can tell you that particularly in the technology enhanced fields and the STEM or the STEAM fields, these are definitely tools to consider. And then finally, before I show you some of these tools, I want to come back to what we talked about again before. One of the best ways to utilize a connection is to have that individual refer you if they're willing to do so. And there's some research that just came out of a story at U.S. News and World Report recently. Some of these are some of the top components that they cite in this particular article. They indicate that when an employee refers someone, that candidate is hired about 2/3 of the time. So, again, that employee referral can be quite beneficial. 60% of employers have referred at least one person to an open position within a company, and 38% of employees have referred multiple candidates for an open job. There may be a financial incentive for the individual referring you. So some companies have very formal processes in place. And if you are successfully hired into a position, there may be a financial bonus for the person that made the referral. The most that I've ever seen is $10,000, which was fairly significant. It might be anywhere between $500 to $1,000 to $2,500, but the highest I've seen for a referral bonus was $10,000. So that's a nice chunk of change. Even $500 is a nice added bonus for somebody to just sort of put your name forward. Starting at the top, this sort of goes for networking as well. But the higher the person referring you is on the corporate ladder, the better your chances are of getting hired, or at least getting an interview. The same is true when you're reaching out to people. Don't hesitate to reach out to those people in aspirant positions, those who are in positions who maybe you aspire to one day. Maybe it's not the next job, but maybe it's a job or two up the ladder from where you are currently. And the other thing that they found in this particular article was that 66% of job seekers ranked employee referrals as being a high to extremely high importance in their job search. This resource ranked higher than company career sites, job boards, and even LinkedIn. So these can be really important tools to be able to utilize. Okay, so before we get to the final thoughts, I do want to share with you some of the resources that we discussed and kind of just in general show you how you can utilize some of these resources to begin to create your list of people. So one of the things that you can do when you log into LinkedIn is to go to the search feature up here at the top and to actually search for people. So there is a people tab here that allows you to sort of search for individuals. And one of the things that I encourage people to do is to really sort of search by school affiliation. One of the best ways for individuals to make a connection is if they have a university connection. So about 90% of the time, people that you reach out to that have graduated from the same program or the same university are very likely to respond to your request. So in this area, I'm just going to put Johns Hopkins. And we'll just find the generic Hopkins area here. And we can see that there are 98,783 connections that could be available on LinkedIn. Now, if I want to only look at a specific location, I only want people who are in the greater Baltimore region. That narrows it down to about 20,000. Now, maybe I want to look only in specific industries. Maybe I want to look, I'm going to look at civil engineering just as an example. Okay, now there are 275 results. So this is a much more manageable listing of individuals. Now maybe I want people who have a certain title. So if I want to put here, the word senior, see what comes up. There are 43 people here who have the title, the word senior somehow in their title. This then becomes a fairly easy list for me to look through and see if I can find any additional connections or if I want to reach out to these individuals. Now, what it will also show you is how you may be connected to a particular person. So first, second, or third plus connections. Basically, this is going to tell me, is there somebody that I know who could potentially introduce me to this individual? Otherwise, I may want to use the InMail feature, which is the internal email system within LinkedIn, to reach out to these folks. And again, depending on the companies that you find, this can be a great way to source companies if you're not sure where to start or what companies to target. Start with a search that just simply looks for people who've graduated with certain degrees from Hopkins and who happen to live in a certain geographic location. You'll begin to see what the names of companies are that these people work for. You can then do the research on those companies. There may be other people that you want to connect with. But this is a really good tool to be able to use. So I encourage you to consider this. Now, I will say that LinkedIn is, if you have the free membership, you can do a couple of these searches per month. If you start using this as a free member, oftentimes what LinkedIn will do is they'll see that you're using it and they'll offer you a free month of their premium service. You might consider signing up for that free month and then maybe canceling afterwards. That's just a good way to be able to use it. But the premium service allows you to search as many as you want. Other ways that you can certainly use this as well, if you want to target specific employers, you can look at current companies and maybe you just want to see who are the people who happen to work at this one particular company. Okay, well, we've got 3 people who happen to work at this Whitman and Associates group. And, that may be, again, a good place to start. It again narrows it down from what we had, 98,000 to 3 people. So use these filters appropriately. The other couple of other resources that I mentioned, this Jibber Jobber Network, it's a career management tool. And basically, you can keep track of your contacts that you make. You can keep track of companies. You can keep track of different jobs that you are applying for here. So this is much more than just a networking tool. But I've added here a contact. I just added myself as a contact. And I can add all of my contact information here. And I actually also have the ability to keep notes. So if I want to keep a note on when I met with a particular person, I can do so. And this helps me, particularly if I'm trying to make a lot of different connections. This serves as a virtual Rolodex to be able to keep the notes from the individuals that I met with. Now you can also do this on LinkedIn as well. I'll go back just very quickly to showcase here that so if Amanda is my friend Amanda happens to work for Hopkins. She's based in Bologna. You know, here I have the ability to see her connection. If I click on more, I can actually leave a note and share additional information about Amanda. So I can go ahead and add a note here to you know, to the different highlights that are available, and I can, you know, keep notes about my connection with Amanda through here. So that's one additional resource. I also mentioned professional associations. And so this just happens to be one professional association. If you look at their professional communities, the National Society of Professional Engineers, they have a variety of different interest groups. Again, you can join these relatively inexpensively. They have these job boards. They also likely have some sort of a presence online as well. And then Go Hop Online is the other resource that I wanted to make sure to show you. And so Go Hop Online, again, is where you would go to basically find alums who have agreed to reach out and connect. So those are just some of the resources that are available, you know, as we kind of round out our presentation for today. You know, networking is not the easiest thing to do. However, it is something that will provide you with many dividends if you spend some time doing so. And if you think about this as just building professional relationships over a period of time and leveraging those relationships for advice, for information, for a referral, or for support, then hopefully that makes it a little bit less daunting. Individuals are, again, in today's marketplace at a disadvantage if you don't reach out to individuals who are in a position perhaps to help. The job market is very competitive, and we are finding that people who do utilize their connections, who build these relationships with individuals, who can be referred through company referral programs as being much, much more successful. That statistic of 87% of employers who are using their networks to find their next employees is a daunting statistic in my mind. And it's one that says that we ignore this process of building professional connections at our own peril. So with that, I want to open it up to any questions that folks might have. Feel free to type questions into the chat box if you have any at this point, and I will be happy to do my best to answer those in the remaining couple of minutes that we have left. Okay, and seeing no additional questions here. Sure. I saw your recommendation for the Go Hop Online, but I missed the other tool we can use as JHA students. Could you show that again? Sure. Let me go ahead and just very quickly show you the tool that I would recommend would be that LinkedIn search, and again using the people search that's available. Just going here, using that people search, looking at the Johns Hopkins University connections, and then being able to utilize those connections from there. Those would be the best resources that I would suggest. Okay, well, we're just about at 8 o'clock, so I do want to thank everybody for joining me. I know some of you may have to leave. I'll stay on for just a couple minutes. I see we've got a couple of other questions. Again, we will follow up with a copy of today's presentation. And if any of you have any additional questions, please do feel free to reach out. Again, a couple of questions that have come through is how do we access the alumni database that you mentioned? If you go to GoHop online, you can create a username and password using your email address. And if you can't find that link, just Google GoHop, G-O-H-O-P online, and that will bring you to the login page that I showed just a few moments ago, and you can gain access to that database. A good question here, what approach would you recommend to build networking connections in other countries? Largely, they would be the same as what I've recommended here. However, depending on the country, some countries are more familially connected, meaning that if you can connect with an individual perhaps through family connections, if you're looking at a country that perhaps you have some family in, leaning on those family connections can be really important. We also have alumni through Hopkins who are working all over the world. So, I would start with either family connections or I would start with Hopkins connections, or I would look to see if it is a multinational company. Say you're targeting a particular company and you're most interested in working in one of their overseas branches. Try to see if you can find an individual maybe in a US branch and maybe connect with them. They may be able then to use the internal company directory to connect you with somebody who may be working in that country office that you might be targeting. So there are not a whole lot of other additional tools that I would suggest. But start with Hopkins alums, again, working all over the world, any family connections that you might be able to leverage. And then if all else fails, certainly reach out individually. But certainly, look at the customs of the country that you are reaching out to. Outreach to Dubai would be very different than outreach to Russia, for example. So, just understand some of the cultural dynamics around communication. And, that will be helpful in terms of figuring out how you might best reach out. Great. Thank you all so much for joining me, and good luck to all of you if you are in a job search. Certainly look forward to connecting with folks one-on-one in the future if you have additional questions. So thanks very much, everyone, and have a great evening.